morning, everybody. We're gonna just wait just a minute or two to let others jump on the call.
Hey, Kristen, while we're waiting, I was on the AWA DEI master class yesterday. It was fantastic. And the gal who runs Red Rover talked about their DEI work and the consultant they work with and the success they've had in increasing diversity in their workplace. And it was really interesting. Everybody in the class was like, we want to know more about it. So I'm just throwing it out there for a future leadership call.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I'd love to hear what she's doing.
Bobby, you got that? Cool. Thanks for suggesting that. Okay, well, we are going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to our pre-Thanksgiving week call. The question of the day is really simple. What is the one thing you're most looking forward to over the holidays? So this can be anything. I am looking forward to like several days to take hikes in the woods. What is like that one thing that you're like, okay, this is keeping me going? Feel free to answer out loud too. Not working. Yes, there's some not workings. Dog walks on the beach. Jealous. Going home. Food. Yeah. Sleep. Sounds like
Aaron Greenwood with the paddle boarding, like kind of rubbing it in the rest of our faces that we don't live in a warm enough place for that.
Have fun with your manatees, Aaron.
Oh, I always have fun with my manatees. You have to understand this time of year is just a huge release because we've made it through the miserable Florida summer. So every second of the beautiful fall is just sweet relief and manatee fun.
Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and get started. We have a really exciting agenda and a topic we've been waiting for a long time. I know there's been a lot of interest in hearing more about the DC cat count outcomes, and so we're going to get to hear about that today, along with several other things. But before we get started, I want to turn it over to Mary Smith from Maddie's Fund.
Thanks, Kristen. It's really great to be here this morning. Gilberto, I think that you have surpassed Bobby today. No offense, Bobby, but he definitely has that fancy Friday look down. Woo!
Hey, I'm just appreciative Bobby's continuing the trend. I put on a dog tie for you on today, Bobby.
Oh yeah, he wins. He definitely wins. Bobby, you got to step up your game. So, you know what, you guys, I've been watching this special on PBS called American Veteran. It's a 4-part documentary, and it's all about the experience of veterans across what they say the arc of history. So it covers all wars. And as I was watching it yesterday, because the episode yesterday was called The Reckoning. And if you don't really know what reckoning means, you should look it up. And as my parents used to do for me, I'm not going to tell you what it means. Look it up. But as I was listening to people talk about what it meant to be a veteran and what their experiences were like when they were no longer in service, and what it meant to try to interact and find their identity among civilians, it occurred to me that a lot of the lessons, a lot of the experiences that they were sharing were things that could really help me as I think about what it means to try to relate, communicate, empathize with people whose experiences were so different from my own. And as I was thinking about as it relates to animal welfare and thinking about some of the challenges we've encountered over the last year as we try to figure out how do we connect to the community our community in a different way? How do we get beyond the walls of the shelters? I realized that there was lots to be learned from a lot of different groups and experiences that actually have nothing to do with animal welfare. And I know it always sounds like the job that we do continues to be harder and harder, and that we layer on more and more things. But I feel like somewhere there's a solution when I can look outside of myself, because as my dear friend Isabel always tells me, the problem and the solution don't look anything at all alike. And when I try to solve things with the same elements of which I believe the problem is composed of, I get confounded and lost and confused and tired and give up. And I don't think we really want to give up. I think we want to continue to move forward. So if you've not seen this special, I would encourage you to check it out, because I think there are some really important lessons to be learned. And then the one thing I want to say to you all as you approach the coming week and Thanksgiving is this is November, and it's in my house Gratitude Month. And as I look to all of you, I'm so grateful that you all continue to show up, not for these calls, but you continue to show up for your teams, for your organizations, for your communities, for your family and friends, in spite of what's really turned out to be almost 2 years of unprecedented challenges. And you inspire me and you fill me with awe. And I am so grateful for all of you. So eat pumpkin pie, take hikes, see family, don't work, do all those things that you've indicated in the chat file. And I'll see you after Thanksgiving. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mary. We want to turn briefly to Dr. Rowan, who is here with an important announcement about an upcoming opportunity. Dr. Rowan?
Thank you very much, Kristen, and greetings, everybody. I'd just like to let everybody know that we're hosting a webinar at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time, Washington time, on November the 30th on the Global Dog Campaign. And we're going to have speakers from Afghanistan, from India, from Costa Rica, as well as some of the characters you're going to see in a moment on the DC cat count. So just Bobby has just put the registration link in the chat. So if you're interested, please register.
Thank you so much. We're really excited about that. Speaking of international dog population management, does anybody know what country has the world's largest animal shelter? Okay, so I think this is right. And Dr. Rowan, tell me if I'm wrong. And Mihaela is here to fill us in. But what we think is that it's in Romania. There's a shelter that holds 3,000 to 6,000 dogs. And I think that's the world's largest. Am I right or am I wrong?
That sounds about right. I mean, there are some big ones in China, but that 3,000 to 6,000 sounds bigger than anything I've heard.
Has anyone been there? Mihaela, are you here?
Hi, yes, I'm here.
With that, I'll turn it over to you. Welcome to the call, and you are here to present today. We didn't get to you last week, but you're here to talk about animal welfare in Romania, and you are the one who shared this with me. And when I thought about, it says 3,000 comfortably and 6,000 possible, and that number just blew my mind. So tell us about animal welfare in Romania. And first of all, tell us a little bit about who you are and how you came to this call today.
I will. Tell me firstly if you see my presentation. Yeah, cool. Thank you very much. So hello, everybody. Thank you for having me today in your call. I'm Mihaela. I'm very happy to be part of Mars Ambassador program. Basically, this is the thing that brought me here in the call. And I'm super happy that I had a chance to work together with American Pets Alive, with Kristen and Casey, and find out more about animal welfare in the United States. Last time you heard some things related to Italy from Ilaria, and today I will share with you some information related to Central Europe, and more specifically to Romania. So if you will have any questions during the presentation, please drop them in the chat and I will take care of it after I will finish. And I will start firstly with a few words about myself. I joined Mars 6 years ago and I had various roles within marketing. Currently, I'm the portfolio manager for dog and cat care and treats for Central Europe. And when we say Central Europe, we mean Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary, and Romania. And I'm dealing with 3 brands: is Pedigree, Frolic, and Dreamies. I'm located in Bucharest, Romania, and I also have a dog that I've adopted from the street last year. At the beginning, something very fluffy, round, and nice. Now it's a huge, huge dog, but it brings us a lot of energy, and the kids are super happy about it. So we are also happy with the decision. And I will start today by giving you a bit more information and context in about Central Europe. So in Central Europe, we have around 12 million dogs, 8 million cats. The number of dogs is bigger than cats in most of the countries. The only outlier in this one would be Czech Republic, where the number of cats is more or less equal with the number of dogs. And you will see that in Romania, we have the highest population of dogs and cats out of Central Europe. And maybe you remember this from the last call that we had when Ilaria shared the situation in Italy, but I would also like to take this chance to tell you once more what's the current state in Central Europe. So basically you see in the map that in Hungary and Romania, we have some laws that are allowing killing healthy stray dogs. In Slovakia, we don't have a clear law that says, okay, it's good or it's acceptable or not acceptable to kill healthy dogs, while in Czech Republic, it's not allowed to kill healthy dogs. And what you see with striped lines is that in those specific countries, there is a time limit on keeping the dogs in shelters. And I will share a bit more information on this one when we get to the Romanian part. And I have another map here that highlights the countries where it is mandatory to have an identification and a registration chip for the dogs. So you will see in light blue, Romania, Hungary, and Slovakia, where it's mandatory to have the chips, while in Czech Republic, this is not mandatory. And I will go further now with Romania, and I would like to share a bit more information about my country. Maybe most of you already know Romania by being the home of Dracula, because basically in the middle of the country, we have Transylvania, and in Transylvania, we have this beautiful castle called the Bran Castle, where the famous Dracula lived. Of course, it was a fiction character, but yeah, this is how the story goes. A second thing about Romania that I would like to share with you is that in Bucharest, we have the second largest administrative building in the world. The first one would be the Pentagon. But what's super interesting about this one is that is the heaviest building in the world. And this is the Palace of the Parliament. It has 1,100 rooms. It's quite big and impressive, and it was built during the communist era. And the third one would be that in Romania, we have the best internet speed in Europe. So this makes it a very good place for people to work from home, and looks like it's the 4th one in the world. So quite a good internet speed, I would say. And while I did this research and preparing the presentation for you, I also found out that in Romania, we have the largest dog shelter in the world. And I would like to share with you a video that talks a bit about this shelter. Hopefully, I turned on the sound so you can also hear it.
Hello and welcome to Animal Watch.
Does it work?
Today we are meeting the biggest dog rescue centre
Thank you.
in the world.
The Smurra dog shelter in Romania is really something astounding. It spans 33 paddocks and houses over 6,000 dogs.
But what makes this so special? Well, this is the Guinness World Record, largest dog shelter in the world.
Initially, the shelter was built in 2000 to breed foxes for the cruel fur trade. It then was turned into another horrific place of death, a place where stray dogs were brought to be killed. However, in May 2001, a lady called Mrs. Uta Langerkamp turned this place into an establishment where the dogs were given the right to live. She rebuilt the crumbling facilities, and it was prepared so that it could accommodate all the stray dogs rounded up from the streets of Pătesti. This lady not only made Smyrna brand new, but she also made it a place of hope. It was named Orlam Shelter. This facility also runs a spay and neuter scheme for the local community, so that poorer people can bring their dogs and have them treated for free, cutting down the amount of strays in the area who may die of disease or be killed. They also run...
It stopped for you as well?
Programs with local children and schools to teach gentleness and kindness to animals.
Thanks to this wonderful woman, the Smyrna Dog House has become a place of salvation and adopts out a whopping 200 dogs a month to organisations and people all over the world.
So yeah, that would be it. Hopefully now you will know two things about Romania, yeah, home of Dracula and also home of the largest dog shelter in the world. Hopefully you enjoyed the movie.
Hello.
And yeah, unfortunately, Romania has one of the largest number of stray dogs in Europe. The numbers are quite diverse, but doing some research looks like there are around 2 million homeless dogs in Romania, and this changed a bit after 2013. Basically, we had even more, but in 2013, the government introduced a law that allowed the authorities to catch and kill stray dogs. Would be like the main cause that I would call out here would be the lack of efficient sterilization program. And the thing is that most of the dogs that we have in Romania are in rural areas where people don't have enough education or they don't have enough budget to sterilize their pets. And thus this leads to massive abandonment both in rural and also in urban areas. And what I would like to highlight as a different thing that happens in Romania is that people are mostly attracted by poor breed pets, so they don't adopt that much. And I found out that looks like annually there are 400K pet dogs that are acquired in Romania. So basically, if we would change that and they would not acquire, they would not target a pure breed pet. And if they would adopt, we would solve this issue with stray dogs in a few years. When looking at the management of dogs, this sits with the local councils and they are considered the owner of the dogs, and it is forbidden to raise a shelter dog. So basically, if you find a dog on the street, you either take it with you at home or you reach out to a shelter. And as I was mentioning on the map, is mandatory for the dogs to be identified, registered, and vaccinated. This is mandatory for dogs, for all the dogs in Romania, while for the cats, the microchip is not mandatory. They would need to have it only if they would leave the country. So I would also like to share a bit with you what's the process. Yeah, once a dog gets in a shelter in Romania, what does it happen? So it looks like in the first 7 days, the dog can be reclaimed by the owner. Then we would have additional 7 days when the dog would be available to be adopted by other individuals inside or outside Romania. After these 14 days, unclaimed or unadopted dogs can be euthanized. This usually happens when the shelter does not have enough money or enough space to keep the dog. And the animals that are considered sick from the very beginning, they can be euthanized immediately. And when someone would like to adopt a dog, there would be some documents that they would need to share with the shelter. And usually they are requesting an ID, a proof of income, and also a proof of property to make sure that once they will get the dog, they will really take care of it, that they will not bring it back. And I put here on the right side of the presentation some different strategies that were applied in 2 different cities in Romania. One is in Bucharest, who applied the killing method. And in 2001, there were 90K dogs in Romania. They applied this killing method, and looks like in 2011, we had around 40K dogs, so efficiency around 50%. While in Oradea, what they did, they used the sterilization method. So basically they were catching the dogs, they were sterilizing them, and then they were releasing them. And looks like this had a higher efficiency when we look at the numbers. When talking about shelters in Romania, we have around 150 shelters divided, let's say half public, half are NGO. And I also put here on the page some costs that I found that the shelters would have in order to capture or also give food to the pets. So you would have some comparison terms. I know this was also shared last time for Italy. And in terms of challenges, I would say that the biggest 3 that we have currently in Romania would be firstly the education, then would be the sterilization, as I mentioned at the very beginning, and also promoting adoption internally. And while I had my MAP program and assignment, I was very much into finding a lot of information related to adoption and what is happening specifically in Romania. And I was happy to find out some initiatives that are happening currently that I would like to share with you as well for inspiration. So one of the things that a public shelter did here in Romania was to put some stray dogs in the arms of soccer players. And they had it at the beginning of the match. And they also had this message, fill in the gap in your life. It looks like most of the dogs that were presenting during the game got adopted. And the practice was also copy-pasted by other countries as well. Some other things that they are currently doing, looks like they are offering help for people who are infected with COVID. So if you would be sick of COVID and you would not be able to take care of your dog, you can call them, they will take the dog and bring it back after you will feel again healthy and energized. And they also organize some promotion, some adoption fair here in Bucharest every weekend in one of the biggest parks. They are bringing the dogs, and as I understood, most of them get adopted as well. We as Mars, we are also supporting this action, and we are donating food to whomever will adopt a dog. And the third thing that they did, again, super nice. In Romania, every year we have this iMap Bucharest, which is the largest international 3D mapping contest. So it's not something commercial, it's just a contest where people go and project different things on the House of Parliament, the biggest building that we have in Romania. And what they did this year, they had a video promoting adoption. So this was the key visual. And I also have the video that I would like to share with you here on the next page. What it says, a life is more colorful with a dog, adopt. And now I will play the movie. It was not a very professional movie, but hopefully I got you inspired and you understood what was happening. So this was a very nice thing that they did, and looks like there are a lot of initiatives, at least in Bucharest and in the big cities that we have in Romania, towards adoption. And I noticed some changing in behavior, that people would be a bit more open to adopt rather than buying dogs. And with this, I'm ending my presentation. Hopefully you enjoyed it and you got some learnings or inspiration from it.
Thank you so much, Mihaela. That was amazing. You can go ahead and unshare your screen, and those are some great ideas and really awesome presentation. So thank you. We have to move on, unfortunately, but Mihaela, would you put your email in the chat? And yeah, it looks
Somebody
like
just put it here.
Yeah. So, and we look forward to, we hope you'll keep coming to these meetings, and thank you so much for that presentation.
Thank you for having me. I will share it with you as well, so you can share it among you guys.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we are going to move on, and just for a really brief interlude, if we have any of our national organization partners here who have an announcement. I know we have conferences coming up. If you haven't done your best friends speaker submission, I think today is the last day. And what else is going on from our national org partners before we move on to the DC cat count?
Kristen, it's Chelsea at Petco Love. We are getting ready December 1st to open up applications for our 1 million vaccine campaign. I know there's a lot of nationals on this call. We'd love your support in that. So the intent is that we have pledged 1 million parvo, distemper, panleukopenia vaccines to owned pets across the country. You can apply for those vaccines on our partner portal, and I'll put the link in the chat. And then Merck will send the vaccines to your organizations. The only stipulation is that they are administered to owned pets, not shelter pets. And when you do a follow-up report, we'll pay you $3 per vaccine administered. There is a small test list right now. There is an invitation only list that we've done 250,000 vaccines with, but beginning December 1st, we're going to open it up to every organization that has the capacity to administer vaccines to owned pets. So hope that you guys will all join us, and just want to make sure that the owned pets in our communities are healthy to then lend themselves to healthy shelter populations. So thanks, y'all.
So Kristen, on the Best Friends front, obviously, yes, today's the last day for the Best Friends conference submissions. Please get those entered in. But it's also been a busy week. We had our second town hall that, as we've reintroduced the series for the winter. Last night it had Tori Fugate from Casey Pet Project and Caitlin Quinn from Heartspeak talking about how to get harder to place animals adopted. I know that's been a huge challenge for a lot of folks who are suffering from longer lengths of stay and that sort of thing, particularly for dogs. So be sure to check that out. That video will be posted probably later this afternoon. And then we also just released this week our Data Explorer, which is a new platform for the B2B audience. We've always made our data available to the public through our Pet Life Saving Dashboard. But this is a tool that I think will be more industry focused to allow you all to do your own custom sorts and that sort of thing, to find the data in a more useful way for the B2B industry. So be sure to check that out. Thanks.
Hey, it's Elena from Shelter Love. I just wanted to share quickly, we have a gift for Shelter Love customers, but it's also a great candidate for the Steal This Idea series. It's a customizable flyer that we will customize for customers with your logo and a unique QR code to get you ready for Giving Tuesday. Put this flyer everywhere, your lobby, local coffee shop, back of the bathroom stalls, anywhere where visitors are. And let's get everybody connected to donations on Giving Tuesday. And I would love to see other software providers do this for customers, because we know it's been a tough year and we want to take advantage of our community's generosity and get that money to our customers. Thanks.
Okay, well, then we will move right on. Lisa LaFontaine and The DC Cat Count team are here to talk all about this project, which has huge implications for the future of community cat work. So welcome everyone. And if you'd go ahead and introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about you and then tell us about the project.
Great. Hi, everybody. I'm Lisa LaFontaine. I'm the CEO of the Humane Rescue Alliance. If I could just share my screen for 1 minute. Can I do that? So can you see this? Many moons ago, I would not be in this field if it weren't for outdoor cats. I had a mother who said we were allergic to animals, which clearly was not true. And so I routinely interacted with outdoor cats up in New Hampshire, which is a pretty inhospitable climate for cats. And I think that they really fostered my love of animals. And this is part of why I was so excited about this project, because I see so many implications for some of the most vulnerable animals in our community. I'd like to just quickly introduce my two colleagues on the call who are going to be presenting. Dr. Tyler Flockhart, are you here, Tyler? Maybe you could just say a word about yourself and then pass it over to John.
Sure. Thanks, Lisa. Hi, everybody. My name is Tyler. My background is in wildlife ecology and conservation biology, and I am the science lead for the DC Cat Count. I'm based right now in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. I'm sure everybody knows exactly where that is. But yeah, really excited to talk about the project today and some of the results that we have so far.
And I am John Boone. I am also an ecologist and the research director of the Great Basin Bird Observatory, which is located in Reno, Nevada, and have also worked with various animal welfare organizations over the years, doing in a consulting capacity. So very happy to be here as well.
And I just want to put in a plug that we are doing an elongated version of this presentation at the association conference on the afternoon Eastern time on December 7th. So if you have any further interest or questions after this presentation, make sure to sign in on December 7th. We're going to do this in an interview style, but I just want to set the framework for this. From the HRA perspective, we had started a really robust TNR program back in 2007, and we were able to get the DC government to move from a place where it was illegal to TNR and release cats to allowing us to do a pilot program to study spay and neuter and TNR. And that was so successful that eventually we've been able to get it written into the laws of the District of Columbia that the animal control program shall promote TNR. However, that being said, although we had been doing this work for years, we didn't have good data. And about 4 years ago, we were in a place where a new wildlife plan was being released for the district. And there was language being bandied about that the district might want to revisit that TNR law. And we prepared to fight this as a legislative battle, but in the privacy of my office, I was deeply concerned because we didn't have data. We did not have good data to fight this. All we could do is talk about anecdotes and passions and stories. And that's just not good enough. And so I began to talk to people about how we could get data. At the same time, there were many other conversations going on in other parts of the country that my colleagues were a part of, where we were looking at doing a study of a cat population in an area to really understand the science and the data. And we were able to bring all these disparate parts together to create the DC Cat Count. And while we're going to focus a lot today on the actual science of the cat count, the outcomes, and the applications, I just wanted to open by saying a word about collaboration. You know, there's a lot of infighting in the field of animal welfare. There is a lot of adversarial posturing, taking each other down, fighting and attacking. And I strongly believe there's no place for any of that in this work. We can't tear each other down. We have to build each other up. And this was an amazing opportunity to bring to the table different interests, different professions, different people who came at this from really unique vantage points. We had wildlife ecologists, we had bird advocates, we had cat advocates, animal welfare folks. I think the beauty of this project is that if for all these years we can pull together around outdoor cats and create something that has a scientific background and foundation, we can come together around anything. And I loved the fact that we picked this as a topic because there is so much passion around this issue, but passion can be distracting sometimes. And so this is based in science, and that's what makes it really different. So that's why I'm so bullish on this. And I just want to jump in right away and just start talking about
I'm sorry, Lisa, I muted you by mistake. Please forgive me.
Geez, I was like, what is
There's the background noise I was trying to get rid of. The wrong button. Sorry.
So I'd like to jump in and start with John, because this really does provide a framework for data-driven decisions. And John, I think there's a shift in animal welfare towards science-based assessments of our programs, especially population management programs. Could you talk a little bit about how the DC cat count is furthering that?
Sure thing. I have certainly noticed that in the 20 years or so that I've had some involvement in animal welfare, noted that interest in a data-driven approach growing. At the same time, interestingly, as a person who is trained and who works in a field that is all about data collection and data analysis and interpreting data, I've been struck by the fact that there is a whole world of techniques and capability and knowledge out there, especially in my field, developed to describe animal populations, that animal welfare has only sort of begun to delve into, just sort of scratching the surface in many cases. So really what I hope in the bigger sense for the DC cat count, beyond just its application to outdoor cats, is that this illustrates that this kind of cross-pollination between fields really is possible, and it can actually work through the mechanism of intelligent collaborations and partnerships. And I hope we succeed in opening the door a little bit more to an awareness of all of the tools that are out there that can be brought to bear on the animal welfare mission. And I do think, every time there's an opportunity to do that, I think people in the animal welfare field are pleasantly surprised by what is out there waiting to be utilized and capitalized upon. So in the bigger sense, that's what I hope the DC cat count has helped to accomplish.
Yeah, and I think that one of the challenges is we had people all along saying to us, so what are you going to do? And we all along, we said, we don't know. We're letting the data guide us. We know that we have resources to apply on the animal welfare side to outdoor cat programs, but let's see what the data shows us before we decide how to put too many more resources into this. And I think that's exciting for all of us. I'd like to put this to both of you. And it's really a question about the project's design. So we looked at all segments of the cat population in DC. We looked at outdoor cats, indoor cats, those who are entering the animal shelter, those who are moving back and forth between being owned and unowned. And I think it's really given us a next generation in how we can manage and understand cats in our communities. Could you guys walk us through the data collection from each of these cat populations?
Sure, yeah, I'm happy to start that conversation. So coming from wildlife ecology, I started thinking about cat populations. And one of the things that occurred to me right away was, well, we're actually talking about different subpopulations. We're talking about cats that are in and out of our homes, that have people that care for them provide for them. We have cats that go through the shelter system where they are basically transitioning between different places. And then we have cats outside. And to me, this was sort of like this eureka moment. I'm sure for everybody on this call, it's like, no kidding. But to me, I thought, oh, this is a really interesting thing. And from a population standpoint, I can think to myself, I can understand how these three populations might relate to each other. And ultimately how if you tweak one of these levers, it may have implications for the other. So that was sort of one of the ideas that we brought together with the DC cat count, thinking about, okay, what are the subpopulations? And then how do you actually sample those subpopulations? And finally, how do you link those subpopulations? So the three populations that we've considered are owned cats or indoor cats, outdoor cats, which include both owned and unowned cats, and then of course the shelter system. And when we think about the transition of cats between those different subgroups, the shelter plays the central role, right? Cats are coming into the shelter for a variety of reasons, and they're going out of the shelter for a variety of reasons. And so basically what this means is we can draw a picture of these different groups of cats with arrows going between each of them. And so that was sort of, if you will, sort of the idea of the population as a whole. And once you have that schematic in your mind, then you can figure out how are we actually going to sample those different populations and link them together. And I'll let John take it from there.
Yeah, and so the actual methods, of course, for shelter cats, the methodology of counting them and measuring them is already well established. Everybody keeps some version of shelter data. For cats that are owned, it was conceptually relatively straightforward. We need to survey the people who own those cats. We need to sample them. Outdoor cats are sort of the conundrum. They're harder to count accurately and sample. And for that reason, we approached it from two different angles. We used both transect counts and automatic cameras. Transect counts are what they sound like. People walk down pre-assigned routes on roads and count the cats that they see. Automatic cameras, many of you are familiar with now, but they're established in particular locations for periods of time, and they take a lot of pictures when anything moves. And those two methods presumably have their pros and cons. Transect counts are relatively easy to conduct. They've been widely used in programs for roaming dog populations internationally, but the feeling was that cameras probably are going to sample that outdoor cat population more thoroughly at the cost of a much more laborious sort of data processing operation that's necessary to turn those pictures into data you can use. So one of the things we explored in some depth in this project was the trade-offs between those methods. And Tyler might talk about this a little bit more, or you may see it in papers that will come out in the future, but it looks like those two methods are actually tending to sample different sub-populations, if you will. Outdoor cats, as you know, are comprised of cats that are truly unowned. They may be outright feral, they may be so-called community cats that have caretakers but not owners, and other outdoor cats are owned by somebody. And these two methods seem to selectively sample one of those subpopulations versus another. So being able to work out what we're actually counting with these two methods moves us a long way towards being able to interpret those results in a meaningful and accurate way.
So we learned a lot about cats in DC. And I want to give this one to Tyler. Tyler, what would you say were the biggest takeaways about the DC cat population in terms of where they live, how they move, how the population is broken down, and what the implications are for that?
Sure. So I agree with you. I think that we learned a whole bunch about the cats in Washington, DC. And I think that we really set up a gold standard for how we might think about cat populations, particularly in cities going forward. So there's a couple of take homes that I want to emphasize. I don't know if I should I share my screen and show a couple of, yeah, okay. Let's make sure that I'm doing this correctly here. Let's see here. Does this look about right? Okay. There we go. Okay, so as we just sort of talked about, here's the sort of different subpopulations and the arrows between each one. And of course, you can see sort of some of the notation here that looks really familiar. And of course, to you, you would probably think, well, of course, this all makes sense. From my standpoint, I'm thinking about this mathematically. How do we put these together so that we actually come up with a holistic understanding of the population? And one of the really important things that I want to emphasize, and that John mentioned before, is data. And understanding the data that surrounds us all the time and the data that we can make use of, and how we relate the data that we collect to underlying attributes of the cities that we're interested in. So here's some of the spatial information about Washington, D.C. with respect to the number of households. So this has to do with housing density, distance to the shelter. So this is distance to services, the different land uses. So we can think about sort of natural areas compared to very built up areas. And underlying socioeconomics such as household income. These are sort of factors that we think about all the time, and we sort of have a natural intuition to link certain components of the cat population to these spatial attributes. But the question becomes, how linked are they? Are they important? And how can we use that to predict what's happening in our system? So I'm gonna flip through a couple of results quite quickly. So, and this looks at the household survey first and then the shelter dates. So the first thing we wanted to know in the household survey is, how are people acquiring cats? So this has to do with the arrows that go between the subpopulations. And as you can see here, the majority of the people that we surveyed, and this is over 2,000 people in Washington, D.C., just under 40% are adopting animals. The lowest proportion comes from cats that are born to people that own other cats. And then we have purchased, received, and strays sort of filling in the middle. So this is the case for Washington, D.C., may hold up in other cities, it may be different, we don't really know. But at least for our system, this is sort of where it fits. And it gives us an idea of, how proportionally speaking important adoption animals are versus some of these other ones, because some of these other attributes we really have no influence on, right? Whereas some of them we do, we're directly involved with them. All right, the next thing we wanted to do is to look at household surveys. And we have to remember that when we look at owned cats, we're talking about ownership at the household level. And so what we wanted to do was to understand who owns cats, and then we wanted to know how many cats that they own. And this figure that you can see on the right is the number of cats per household, the predicted number of cats per household based on these underlying features such as age, income level, and things like that. And so what this provides is it gives us an indication of where the highest densities in the number of cats per household are in different parts of our area, and the lowest number of cats per household. And if you remember a couple slides ago, we had a map of the number of households in each one of these squares. So when you multiply household density by the number of cats per house, you end up with a population estimate across your whole district. So this provides two pieces of information. One is that there's about 200,000 cats, owned cats in Washington, D.C. And we can break this down by the number that have indoor-only access, indoor-outdoor access, or outdoors all the time, and the percentage of those cats. But it also gives us a spatial idea of where those cats occur, right, which is useful information. So in terms of overall population, we're talking about 200 owned cats, and about just under half of those have some degree of outdoor access, which of course is an important part of the conversation when it comes to both outdoor cats and how we might sample them, but also things like environmental impacts and what have you. Okay, so I want to move on to the shelter data here. And as John mentioned before, a lot of these data are probably collected by most shelters, I would think, in the United States. So this is the number of intakes per grid square across the district. This is over a 4-year period. So on its own, we can see that, there seems to be sort of these hot spots that correspond to where many of the cats are coming from. And when we look at outcomes, again, we can find distinct patterns with respect to these outcomes. The important thing to remember, though, is that underlying this is the number of houses in each one of those squares. Right, so a lot of people will look at these data and say, oh, I see really strong patterns, but of course that may just be the underlying pattern of the number of houses, right, which on its own is not that informative. So we need to sort of dig down using statistical models to understand these factors a little bit better. And when we dig down and we look at the per household level of the number of intakes and outcomes over time, what we can do is we can calculate what I refer to as sources and sinks. So if you look at this map on the right, sources are here in the red, sinks are in, sources are in the green, sinks are in the red. A source is a square where the number of intakes per household is higher than the number of outcomes per household. That is, this is where the cats are coming from as they come into the shelter. In contrast, a sink is where you have more outcomes than intakes. That means the cats are going from the shelter to those areas. So when we look at this and we do a statistical analysis to make sure that we are finding robust and consistent results, we can see that along the southern and the eastern side of the district are source areas. This is predominantly where the cats are coming from on a regular, consistent basis. The red areas are where those cats are going to. So we can see a large section up here and a large section sort of in the middle of the district as well. These are where the cats are going from the shelter. So we can identify two pieces, in my mind, two pieces of information here. One is where are the locations and what are the possible ways to address the source areas. So these may be areas where we might want to put resources in terms of keeping cats in homes or providing assistance. And the red areas are those areas where the cats are going to. So these are essentially clients that are the best bang for your buck in terms of the willingness to adopt or take animals in. So these are sort of two components of this sort of balance equation to consider. The next thing we wanted to look at was the spatial reasons with respect to intake type when we consider those underlying geographic features. And so we have 4 intake types that we considered: surrenders, strays, return to shelters, and seized. And then we looked at the predictors of those reasons. So basically what you see here is more or less hotspot maps of what the most common or the highest probability for a given intake type is across the district. Now, remember that the 2 main intake types here are surrender and stray. So these are what's really driving intakes. And when you look at these, you can see that a lot of the surrenders seem to be coming from certain parts of the district. A large number of the strays, again, seem to be coming from a certain part of the district, right? And again, we see these patterns across, right? There's sort of these hotspots for return to shelter and areas where they're seized. So again, this provides useful information for us, for HRA, to understand how we might address this and what the needs are across the community. So this is intakes. Let's have a look at outcomes. 3 different types of outcomes. Adoption, which is the predominant one up here on the left. And we can see again, we have sort of these bright hotspots here where most of those animals are going to. And if you think back, that corresponds with those source areas that we talked about before, where most of the cats are going to. Return to owners, again, a hotspot down here, and service out animals. So these are animals that come in for the TNR service down here. So overall, you know, there's definite spatial patterns and understanding of why these patterns arise within the District of DC that I think is both useful, both from a practical standpoint for HRA, but also when it comes to sort of our underlying goal of understanding the population, the subpopulations and the holistic population within Washington, DC. And with that, I will flip it back to Lisa.
Thanks, Tyler. I always love seeing this data. I put in the chat that we were able to do this project because we got generous support from Maddie's fund, the ASPCA, HSUS, and PetSmart Charities. But we know that not everybody is going to have the ability or wherewithal to do a project this comprehensive. I mean, we did surveys and studies. This was a 3-year project. We had a lot of wildlife cameras. I think one of our intents was to make this as widely applicable as possible. And so I think one of the best tools that we developed was the DC Cat Count Toolkit. John, would you walk us through the toolkit and what its applications and implications?
Sure thing. And I would like to preface it by reemphasizing what you just said, because this is a comment that we hear often. The DC cat count was indeed a complicated cat counting project, but that was because we were intentionally taking a very deep dive into the methodology to try and figure out what works, what's reliable, what the sort of the best workflows are to answer the questions that people want to answer. We neither expect nor would encourage people who are doing cat management projects with more animal welfare oriented goals or population management oriented goals to take that deeper dive. In fact, they shouldn't. It would be a misuse of their resources. So we understand that the average user is not going to take this deep dive, and the toolkit was made basically for them. It was made for practitioners, not for scientists. And we think this toolkit, which I'm going to now show you in the screen share here, there it is. Share. Okay. This toolkit has got, we think, something for everybody, whether they're doing a cat-centric project or even if they're just interested in the sort of techniques that we used for applicability to other facets of their operation. So I'll scroll through this briefly, and you'll see that we start out with a roadmap to the toolkit and an introduction to cat counting. I'm sorry. I would encourage everybody to, with any interest in this at all, to read that introductory section. And we move on to some sort of overview projects having to do with goal setting, populations and metrics, coalition building and other things. Again, these have broad applicability. They're written for the general animal welfare practitioner. We move from there into sections that I, at least, and I think the others on our team are really proud of, because we tried to take technical issues about sampling and about data analysis and reposition those for users who haven't had formal training in those fields. And I think I hope that's going to be a real contribution to the animal welfare field in general, because many of you interface with questions that have to do with sampling and data analysis, whether it has to do with cats or something else. And we feel like this is a really good primer in how to have constructive and relevant conversations with the people who are doing these things more directly. And then from there, of course, in the toolkit, we move on to the actual cat counting methods. We've described all of them in Tyler's presentation and before, which are shown right here. So bottom line, this toolkit is written for the practical user. We think it has something for everybody, whether they're doing a simple project, whether they're doing a complicated project, or whether they just want to know more about some of these topics in general. And yeah, please take a look at it. And we're always available to clarify any questions you might have after doing that. Stop share, there we go.
So I just want to, I thought maybe each of the three of us could just take, a minute to talk about what we think the significance of this is going forward. For me, outdoor cats are a pretty vulnerable population. And yet what we have seen is that they were social lubricants to bring so many people together in this project. And it wasn't just the scientists and the experts, it was the members of our community, because we had citizen scientists who were uploading pictures of cats, who volunteered enthusiastically to have wildlife cameras in their yards, people who were just binging on our wildlife camera images. We forget Washington is a city with a lot of green space and a lot of wild animals. And so this really elevated the stature of all animals in our community, particularly those who haven't had much stature. And I think that's going to be really important, and something we can all do in our organizations is look for ways to leverage animals as community connectors. Tyler and John, what about you? What's really personal and significant for you?
So the DC cat count to me is sort of this has been a long time coming for me. I started working on cats, 8 years ago or so, and I came from a wildlife background, a bird conservation background, right? So the idea of cats in our communities was really there, and I always knew that it was there. But I thought I need to understand cats before I started getting into this whole cat bird thing. So I got into the cat side of things, and it totally opened my eyes working with cat people, what I call cat people who care about cats and the reason why they care about cats. And it blew me away about how dedicated they were towards cats and animal welfare. And I found it really inspiring. And it started making me think, okay, the conversations that we're having between cat folks and wildlife folks are not useful. They don't get us anywhere. All we do is get mad at each other. And what's missing? What's missing is an underlying basis of fact centered around the data. And we can't be scared about the data. The data is the data. If we collect it properly and we analyze it properly and we look at it, then it gets us closer to the truth, and we can't be scared of that. We have to embrace it, right? We have to embrace the fact that the data may be different than we thought, right? And that's okay, because ultimately what we're trying to do is make good decisions that get to our core beliefs as individuals and as groups, right? And whether those are centered around animal welfare or protection of the environment, or in my case, both, how do we do that? We need data to do that. And we need to be able to have conversations with each other to do that. So that's really what the DC Cat Count is for me, is bringing together experts that have different sort of gut feelings about what they hold the most dear, but willing to put those on the shelf a little bit so that we can collect data on something that we're interested in. How many cats are there and where are they? Once we know that, then we can actually get into these deeper conversations that are going to be way harder when it comes to how do we manage cats. That's where it gets really tough. But as long as you have a group of people that you know and trust, you can do that, because you can have those honest conversations, right? Where you can actually be vulnerable a little bit. That's what the DC Cat Count is to me, right? It's building up this process over many years so that I have a group of people that I can be honest and frank with when it comes to how do we address this challenge? Because we have to address it and stop yelling at each other.
Tyler said that quite well. I won't elaborate on most of that. He covered the relevant points very nicely. It's the culmination of a lot of conversations, a lot of effort by a lot of people over a lot of years. And we hope that it's a bridge to a better way of interacting with a group of stakeholders to focus on their common goals, and also a bridge to greater appreciation in the animal welfare world for all of the things that the science community can bring to the table to help animal welfare goals be pursued more effectively. So with that, we would like to thank you for the opportunity to be here and share this with you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. This was a great call. I know we are a little past the end of time, so we will let everyone go and hope you have a wonderful holiday, and we will see you back here in 2 weeks. Thanks, everybody, and we're so grateful for all of you this holiday.